So, this is the last stretch of the last day of the GA before the side meetings tomorrow. So, thank you very much for your patience and attention this morning. We're nearly there. So, we've got 2 more sessions. The first is on the European to national perspective, and then the final is on the European policy and what we can do as C3S to meet societal needs. So I do encourage you to think of questions for the last session. There's still a few coming in, but it'd be great to have more participation from the audience and getting your ideas about how C3S could evolve to meet these needs. So before we get going, I just want to make sure that everyone's seated as comfortably as you can on these chairs, and then we'll make sure we start on time because people need to get flights, trains, and to get home. So, I think we make a start, and people can come in dribs and drabs. But the first session is hosted by my colleague, Christina. So, Christina, over to you.
So, good afternoon. I'm really pleased to introduce this session, where the idea is really to start from the European perspective on policy DGs, on policy needs, to arrive at a national level, and we are going to give you an overview of our action to better uptake C3S data at national level. So this session dives into how European policy focusing on managing climate impact and adaptation can be implemented at the national level. And we will start with Maciej from DG Klima and with André from ECMWF to set the scene at European level. Then we will introduce what C3S is doing to undertake activity to support the implementation of this EU policy at national level. And we have Rutger that will introduce the user intelligence activity to show how this EU policy can become user needs in the different countries. Then we will do a very short tour around Europe, and I will give the floor to 4 countries, Belgium, Poland, Ireland, and Greece, that will tell us about their national ongoing action, their needs, but also their expectation. Then there will be Linda introducing what we are doing, how this national ongoing climate action can be supported by our joint coordination office. And then the session will close with the Sam that will introduce the action that C3S is putting in place to implement the proper national collaboration program. So let's start with Maciej from DG Klima. He's responsible for organizing support of digital and Earth observation technology for EU climate policy. And the floor is yours.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, yes.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for my voice. It's not only after yesterday evening event. I hope I will do well. Coming from the regulator perspective, but first maybe I would like to thank ECMWF and C3S. It's my 3rd assembly, but it doesn't mean that we are very advanced in the journey of using Earth observation intelligence in our policies. We are, I would say, on the journey, and we are very happy to have to be on this journey with our entrusted entities, in particular C3S. The context of our policies is well known, so just to remind you, with our sustainability goals for 2050, with intermediate goals for 2030 and 2040, which are targeting making our economy sustainable, but at the same time competitive worldwide, which is becoming a challenge, but we are still keeping the line to have the sustainability goals in our policies. The policies are spanning across multiple domains. There are representatives of our other directors in the Commission that they do manage these policies. So in a nutshell, except of climate policies, we are very much present in the energy policies, first of all, with taxation and trade, transport policies. But there are bits and pieces of the policies also in our growth, climate policies, so our growth strategies, and not only pretty much everywhere, even with our space policies, including coming space law, we are trying also to introduce the sustainability component. So that's the policy landscape. The landscape of Copernicus is known for everyone. We have wonderful services for climate change, security, emergency, land, atmosphere, and marine. So overall, these services are designed to help not only us, but also the member states that are belonging to the European Union. So while this section is about that, maybe I try to put a little bit structuring from how we see the contribution of the member states to the policies. The contribution of the member states to the climate policy sustainability goals, especially 2030 with Fit for 55 policies, are defined in the climate law. And in the climate law, there are mitigation goals, which are distributed to the Union as a whole, which are then reported to the Paris Agreement and Conference of Parties, but they are also individually demanded from the member states by the structure that is called National Energy and Climate Plans. And that's where we also see a lot of elements that can be, from one hand, observed from the Earth, and from the other hand, also facilitated for the member states to report their progress in the sustainability goals, in the climate goals in the mitigation area. We are also looking forward for using this Earth observation intelligence in anticipating the changes in our policies. This is very important, starting from the climate science with our mission for adaptation. We'll have a presentation later on from my colleagues. But also completely new policies worldwide, like non-CO2 monitoring for aviation. So structuring that, we need the climate intelligence for so-called MRV, for setting science mitigation targets, and for anticipation, and for gluing it together in a way that it's allowing us to be competitive. Sorry. Okay. The member states are responding to our scrutiny for fulfilling their mitigation and adaptation goals in national energy and climate plans, but also in land use and land use change regulation that is requiring very subtle and regular monitoring of the land, and that's where the national actions are required from the member states, who are supposed to report on the forestry, on their agricultural land use, but also on their renewable energy targets. And with renewable energy targets, they also need to increase these targets according to the planning that is agreed per each and single member states. With adaptation, we do not have a mandate to separately require from the member states reporting on adaptation, but we do require them to have non-contradictory reporting with adaptation with the national energy and climate plans. For instance, for their efforts in renewable energies cannot be implemented at the cost of decreased resilience for climate change, like hydropower cannot provoke the droughts in the member states. So we are also checking that with the national reporting. With the mission of adaptation, we are looking at the national initiatives of the research consortia to exchange the knowledge of the climate adaptation, which is really needed in many places in Europe that have sudden changes that have not been there before. The example is, for instance, forest fires in the Netherlands. that have not been almost no present before, but they are slowly happening. This climate Earth observation intelligence should help in multiple areas of our policies. And I have drawn here some actions that may be considered for also for national national bodies that are present or hearing this conference. We have a need for having more products that are tailored for both checking the inventories of greenhouse gases, also on the national level, and also checking the land use inventories. And on adaptation, we have a targeted product that are regional for the moment, and we are looking forward also to have that tools like Climate Adapt of EUCRA to be more on a national level that can be useful nationally for implementing national adaptation strategies and making the efforts to have non-contradictory measures for mitigation. And this is not open list, so we will also try to have a proposal to C3S for more products. There will be a next presenter talking about the process we are together with C3S for developing this product. And last but not least, we are looking forward for the results of the next digital twins that will answer more questions, more policy questions on a very granular level that is exactly needed on a national scale as well. So thank you for your time, and I hope I have not exceeded it so much.
Is there any burning question for Maciej? No? Okay. So let me give the floor to Andre Obregon. He's a senior technical officer in the user outreach and engagement section at ECMWF, and he oversees the C3S user intelligence contract. He is going to present us a short report on the DG Clima policy workshop that we had last month with Maciej, with the support of Maciej and with DG Clima in general. Thank you, Andre.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christina. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm going to briefly report on the first event of its kind, so the first C3S policy workshop held last month in collaboration and with the kind support of DG Clima. So the previous speaker was instrumental in making this workshop happen. Obviously, DG DFI was also closely involved in that, and we had our user intelligence contractor supporting the event. Just to give you a little bit of context, obviously, this is not a recent engagement. We have been talking to DG Clima of course, for the last years, etc. But let's say in the beginning of the year, the process got a bit more formalized. There was a high-level visit from the DG of ECMWF to DG Clima. And we are now here at the GA and have also good representation from DG Clima, including on Monday. And what we're doing now is, let's say, taking the things to, let's call it, the working level. So we have been running a survey over the last months across DG Clima units, also with the kind help of Maciej, that should inform us about the policy needs and those areas that might benefit from C3S data and products. And this has led to the first policy workshop, which is supposed to be a start of a sequence. So we are planning to have a series of workshops with DG Clima over the next months and years. The objective, very generally, was really to start a dialogue with DG Clima. First of all, to raise awareness of our product portfolio, and also to learn about policy requirements, interest across the different units, priorities, and how we might benefit these policies. And last but not least, we wanted to explore concrete collaborations and also come up with some key action items, which I can already say we achieved. So just on this survey, just a few results. We asked the different units about their main interest, and it was interesting to see that attribution came up quite a lot. We mentioned this on Monday already. There may be a new C3S contract coming, so extreme weather events, but also climate indicators, of course, and the reanalysis products. On the right-hand side, you see the main barriers for the uptake of C3S products. First and foremost, a lack of awareness of these products, and this is why we had this workshop in the first place, but also sort of a lack of capacities. Even if people are aware of the products, they might not be able to use them appropriately or know for which purpose. So there's something that points to a need for more training as well. Then the workshop itself, it was a 3-hour event. We had some high-level presentations. Carlo Bontempo was there talking about the C3S service. But we also had a targeted discussion where the different units expressed their needs, etc. And we touched on a lot of different topics actually in an open discussion. As I mentioned, detection and attribution of extreme weather events came up, and this might be an opportunity for further collaboration in the future. Information of impacts, obviously very important. The adaptation unit was present there as well, so this is a tangible area. Not only climate data, it was also talked about socioeconomic data and the integration of these sort of data types. Interestingly, what was discussed was also how C3S could help with debunking false claims of climate, so countering disinformation basically. Then obviously collaboration at the national scale is of relevance, and C3S and the ECMWF member states that with this connection we could support this. And the accessibility of information on C3S products is a major barrier, so it's difficult still to understand what tools to use, how to make the best use of it, so we need to bridge this gap, and this is why we also agreed to have more working level, let's say, discussions and meetings. My last slide already on the key outcomes. In a nutshell, so there is certainly a need on the DG Klima side for climate data, as Marcia also pointed out, for many different purposes, including the monitoring of the climate, etc., how we can support climate policies. The problem is the landscape of service providers is quite diverse, as we know, and maybe difficult to understand from the policy point of view, and to understand for what purpose products can be used and maybe not, etc. There was a very clear desire from both sides to have a more in-depth interaction going forward with regular exchanges, transitioning from the strategy level that I laid out in the beginning to the more, let's say, working level. This will help us to understand how we can better meet policy needs in order to design, maybe co-design even respective solutions. The action list you see also there, so a couple of concrete outcomes there. So we agreed to plan follow-up workshops, maybe one even this year, towards the end of the year, and taking some of the discussions that we started there to the working level, so having concrete meetings with respective people. Then involving DG Klima in certain developments on the C3S side to really look into how we could somehow start to co-design things. So the attribution came up as an example. We heard of this on Monday. There will be an ITT coming out soon. That this is an opportunity to involve, for example, DG Klima in this in some shape or form. Training, we have mentioned this quite a lot already over the last days. So we agreed, or we volunteered to provide a list of training material that could be of use for DG Klima, and even go further and to explore somehow how we can provide training that may meet some of the needs. And lastly, we will start a mapping exercise between the policy areas that Marcia laid out and the potential C3S products that could respond to those needs. So as you can see, it was quite fruitful, quite constructive, tangible, and we're looking forward to continuing this collaboration. And I stop here. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, André. Is there any question for André? No? Ah, yes, Francesca. I think that's it.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Francesca Somma, DG JRC. Thank you very much. I was actually present in this event, yes. So I really enjoyed the way it developed, and I'm looking forward to further phases. Do you have plans to actually enlarge this exercise to other key DGs or DGs that might have a lot of use for your data, like us, for example, DG Energy? And also, in relation to the themes you listed, Is there any planning for what the next 2 themes that you will tackle are? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Francesca, and your participation in the workshop was also very much welcomed, so thanks for that. So in terms of the concrete action items we are going to follow up on, we start with a mapping exercise, I think, and then we go into concrete discussions with the relevant units. Regarding the other question, targeting other DGs, this is very much in the planning. So that was the whole idea in the beginning when we started with this concept of policy workshops, etc. DG Klima was, let's say, the natural candidate to begin with, but there are plans to target also other DGs. For example, as you mentioned, DG Energy, DG Int, for example. DG Environment is more on the CAM side, but there may also be some synergy. So yes, we have been starting to look at this, and yeah, it depends a little bit on the scope of all this, but it's certainly being planned, yes. Thank you.
If I can complement with the support of KCO, and I think that this can be mentioned in this context. So, thank you, André. Yeah. Now I give the floor to Rutger Dankers. He is a researcher in climate impacts and climate services at the Wageningen Environmental Research in the Netherlands. And he will briefly introduce us the user intelligence contract, the contract that they are managing for policy and national uptake. Thank you, Rutger.
Thank you.
5 minutes.
So in order to support climate action at the national scale, we need climate information that is fit for purpose, that is of high quality, and that adds value to the users. That means that we as service providers need to understand who those users are, how they are using the information, what they're using it for, and also how they would like the information to be delivered. So this is what we are trying to support C3S in our user intelligence contract. And what do we mean with user intelligence? It means that we get a really good understanding of who the users are and what they use the information for, and also what needs they have that we may be able to address in the future. So one of the things we have been looking at is how you characterize the users. So all the requirements that we collected are collected in a database. That database has already been around for a while and was set up quite a few years ago. And it already had a way of characterizing different types of users. And we have been taking that forward, and this is not finished at all, so this is still work in progress. We've also been looking at user personas that we have heard about this morning. And there's also at the level of European Commission, there's an official classification of users. But I think the main thing to keep in mind is that there's not one type of user. There's a very diverse user base. And some of the users may actually be producers of climate information themselves. So earlier in the General Assembly, we heard about people who are using error 5 reanalysis to develop new AI techniques to then further produce climate information. So that would be typically a user of C3S who is then also producing further information. There may be intermediaries who use the information to produce, for example, very sector-specific indicators or information. There may be people who are engaged in education or journalists who need the data to create new information or new graphics that is then distributed widely to a wide audience. Or there could be people who are actually in charge, people who actually make decisions around issues around climate adaptation or this mitigation. As I mentioned, we try to collect these user requirements, and user requirements really come from interacting with the users. And there's various ways you can do that. We will be organizing a number of events, more about it later, but they can also come from the help desk, for example, or for dedicated workshops or interviews, or indeed in some of the sectoral activities within Copernicus, they also engage with users. And again, this morning we heard some examples of that as well. So all of those user requirements are collected in a database, and then on a regular basis they're being analyzed and then reported. And then there's a process within Copernicus then to review these requirements on a regular basis, and some of those may be implemented right away, or some of those may then inform the future evolution of the service. So we will be organizing a number of activities of user interaction sessions within the contract. at 3 different levels. So tomorrow we'll have the first one at the national level, which will be here in Brussels, in this venue, focusing on users in Belgium. But we will be also organizing a number of sessions looking at transboundary regions, so think of the Mediterranean or the Baltic region. And already mentioned, we'll also be organizing a number of policy workshops specifically for some of the DGs within the European Commission. So that is something that will happen in the next 2.5 years. And because this session is about national climate services, I thought it would be nice to look at what is currently in the database of user requirements, looking at where these requirements come from. So obviously we shouldn't over-interpret this, but one thing that I noticed here is that, you know, obviously many of the requirements come from European countries, but there's only in the top 10 of on the list of origin, there's only one Eastern European country. Why that is, I don't know. These are requirements, so it doesn't necessarily reflect the user, the activity of the users in a particular country as such, but it is interesting to note that that is the case. So, as a final slide, just to give you an idea what such a national user interaction session looks like. This is the agenda for tomorrow's meeting. So we'll have an introduction about climate services and the community within Belgium. There will be an overview and introduction of C3S products because we have a diverse public. Some people will have used C3S product before, but some may never have done so. But really the heart of the session is an interactive session where we try to engage with the users, try to understand what is their need for climate information, what do they need it for, how would they use the information, if there's a product that is available for them, or if there's not a product for that's already there, how would it need to look like. And then we will follow this up potentially with some dedicated interviews with some people we have made contact with tomorrow. So that's my last slide.
Is there any question for Rutger? No?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
So now we start, as I said before, a quick tour around Europe. We have 4 countries that are going to present. 3 of them are here with us, and the 4th one is connected online. Now I give the floor to Belgium, that hosted us for this event, Rosemien de Troc. She's a climate scientist at the Belgian Climate Center. She's in charge of the climate services there. Thank you, Rosemien. 5 minutes, huh?
Does this work? Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the introduction, Christina, also for the invitation to present the Belgian perspective within this session. So if we talk about European policies, then the first relevant policy is the adaptation strategy, which states that the European Union can adapt to the unavoidable impacts of climate change and become climate resilient by 2050. It describes 4 objectives, so to make adaptation smarter, swifter, and more systemic, and to step up international action on adaptation to climate change. How this is translated to Belgium, you can see it here on the other side of the slide. So in Belgium, adaptation is a matter of the regions. So Flanders has an adaptation/climate plan. The Brussels region has one. The Walloon region has one. And in parallel, there's also a federal adaptation plan. Based on all these regional and federal plans, the most common or priority measures are then compiled in another plan, the National Adaptation Plan. Unfortunately, currently, the update of this National Adaptation Plan is not adopted yet, so the update is ongoing, but the current National Adaptation Plan goes until 2020. Nevertheless, I really want to highlight two important measures that are included in the current adaptation plan. The first is the creation of the Belgian Climate Center. So at the end of 2022, the Belgian Climate Center was created with a mission to maximize the impact of science on climate mitigation and adaptation in Belgium to support an efficient and socially just transition. One of our key objectives is really to ensure an effective knowledge transfer, and from this objective we have been using many times already the C3S climate bulletins as well as the European State of the Climate. So here you can see an illustration of one of the latest interviews that was done by our scientific director based on the climate bulletin that stated that May was the 12th month in a row with record-breaking temperatures. As a second measure within this national adaptation plan, it's the development of national climate scenarios, which are of very high spatial and temporal resolution. These scenarios are developed in collaboration with the National Met Service and other regional research institutes. But of course, they are also created based on dynamical downscaling of global and regional climate models, which are taken from the C3S climate data store. So the CMIP6 and the Eurocordex models are used in this context. Another important and relevant EU policy is the climate law. It provides a framework for achieving climate neutrality within Europe by 2050. And more specifically, it states the binding target of net domestic reduction in greenhouse gases by at least 55% by 2030. And as an illustration of a Belgian National Climate Service, I would like to show you here a tool that has been developed with different research partners in Belgium to quantify the wind and solar potential in Belgium up to the level of the municipalities. And for this, to quantify this wind and PV potential, again, the ERA5 data has been used to dynamically downscale using a Belgian climate model. The results from this study, and also with this service, really shows that there is sufficient technical potential in Belgium to meet the climate ambitions. To end, and as a perspective, I think that C3S demonstrator projects could benefit from a higher uptake and could inspire more national or Belgian sectoral users, in particular in context of the federal and regional adaptation plans that indeed describe in detail measures for sectoral domains, such as biodiversity, infrastructure, risk management. And also, in context of the recent created Belgian Center for Risk Assessment of Climate Change, these demonstrator projects and sectoral impacts could play an important role. With this, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Yes. Just wait 1 second. Yes.
Yeah.
At least one question.
Yeah.
Hope my microphone.
Okay.
From the perspective not of the regulator but the person living in Belgium, I am observing that some of the communes are independently gathering climate data, precisely the thermal leakage of the buildings. Are you also somehow looking at collecting or consolidating this data from the municipalities? What is your approach?
Specifically on these data, well, I don't know a lot about it, but I know there are projects that retrieve this type of data, and I suppose they should be available somewhere through one of the many data portals. But yeah, sorry, I cannot give you a clear answer to this specifically question. Yeah.
Thank you. Is that Carlo, please?
Yes.
Thank you for the presentation. It's great to see that the products are already being used and they have an impact on the ground. So, like a letter to Santa, if you could decide what we should do next, what would be on top of your list to support you?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it's related to the latest actions of the National Collaboration Program, to which we submitted a proposal. Yeah, so actually, starting at the Belgian Climate Center, we are very much connected to the National Met Service, and there we really start from the very beginning, like with making data more easily accessible. And also in this context, I think, yeah, C3S and specifically then the infrastructure and the climate data store could really help us to reach this goal. Not only European level data, but also national data, yeah.
Thank you, Rosemary. Yeah. Thank you for your presentation. Now we move online and we move to Poland. Joanna Strudzewska should be online. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello. Hi, Joanna. Nice to meet you online. Joanna leads the Department of Atmospheric and Climate Modeling at the National Research Institute of Environmental Protection in Poland. She is involved with us also on the CAMS NCP, so welcome to you, Joanna, and she will bring her expertise and her needs from Poland to C3S. Joanna, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. So first of all, thank you for the opportunity to present a climate service for Poland, which has been developed in 2018. So referring to European policies, we will focus on adaptation. Next slide, please. So as I have mentioned, we have started in 2018, and our goal was actually very similar to the goals of Copernicus. So we wanted to provide homogeneous, verified, and free of charge information for administrative units and also for ministries for diverse applications. So these are adaptation plans mostly, but also we are very interested in collaboration with ministries to develop the sectoral impact in terms of climate adaptation. And of course, some of our activities are dedicated to user engagement, research and education. Next slide. So in our service, we have taken into account many parameters. This is mostly temperature and precipitation. These are parameters that users are mostly interested in, but we also prepared wind speed, solar irradiance, humidity, snow cover, cloud cover, and some projection for potential energy from solar and wind farms. And overall, we have developed 60 indices based on these parameters for two scenarios, RCP 4.5 and RCP 8.5, as this was based on Eurocordex R5. Next slide. So what was the connection to C3S service? So we have developed statistical downscaling based on Eurocordex regional models, and we have downscaled based on various spatial data. This was ERA 5, ERA Land, UERA, and also we have used EOPS. That time EOPS was not available via CDS, but now it is. Also now Eurocordex models are available via CDS. So during the update of these projections, we will certainly use CDS. And apart from this data, we have used also some satellite observations and the data from the National Institute of Meteorology and Water Management. Next slide. So this is the web portal. So data, as I said, the data are available for administrative region. This is an interactive portal. We provide list of parameters with definitions, and also Static plots and tables are available for each parameter. Next slide. This is an example of what we provide. So these are moving averages, maps, and monthly distribution. For some indices, these are histograms for the annual basis, monthly averages, and seasonal averages. And also, it is possible to generate differences between decade in the future and current decade, 2010 to 2020. Each plot data used for each plot can be downloaded as CVS files, so it's really easy for users to visualize in Excel or any GIS software. Next slide. This is an example of static plots. So based on this multi-ensemble, we have assessed uncertainty of the projections for each parameter. This is an example of the data average over area of Poland. Also as maps showing 9 decades. So it's easy to just learn a bit more on not only on the temporal variability, but also on spatial variability of particular parameters. As I said, we have 60 indices. Next slide. And our users. So these data are, in fact, widely used for strategic documents, for urban and regional adaptation plans, and also for sectoral adaptation plans by ministries. So, of course, our main user is Ministry of Climate and Environment, which is responsible for adaptation in Poland. But also Ministry of Economic Development was interested in the context of the project Bridges for Regions. And in terms of transport sector, General Directorate for National Roads and Highways undertook adaptation plan, which was based on this data. Also, Road and Bridge Research Institute is one of our stakeholders, as well as Warsaw University of Life Sciences, which is dealing with hydrological projections for Poland. And when new regional simulations will be available under R6, we plan to update our projections using C3S data. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanna. Is there any question for Joanna? No? Okay, thank you, Joanna. So now we move further north to Ireland. We have 2 speakers, Tim McCartney and Rowan Feely, both professor Department of Computer Science in Manitou University. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Christina. This is a national perspective rather than the national perspective. So the dial here that I'm just going to talk about very briefly, myself and Tim, is more towards the mitigation, land use, sustainable land use, wider sustainability piece. So just in terms of the context, the challenge we faced nationally when we were trying to support national reporting and also evidence-based policy at national, regional, local government level was this kind of last mile delivery challenge. Along the x-axis, we have spatial scales changing, increasing, the y-axis is time. There's this wide diversity of different data sets that are all relevant to tackling the challenge. However, they were held in different stores, different locations, and the key challenge was how do we take all this relevant data and turn it into the useful information to support evidence-based policy formulation, not just for national policy, but also European, specifically around the Green Deal, EU 100 cities, and more recently the Nature Restoration Law. The challenge we face, and a number of speakers have illustrated this previously, is globally we know that the relevant data data sets, environmental data sets, are incredibly fragmented. They're held in different portals, different locations, different users. They lack a standardized data catalog, associated metadata, and this provides a key challenge to moving the research forward. So we wanted to try and address this challenge. I should say that we sought to develop a research infrastructure that was open source, open access, open data to support wider research initiatives, and we use and consume C3S and wider Copernicus data in order to deliver services to national and local government, but also to wider stakeholder groups. Again, the LULUCF regulation, this shift towards national-based to more geographically specific or geographically refined information is becoming really critical now in the delivery of EU policies. How do we get to reporting at paddock, at neighbourhood scale in order to drive effective evidence-based information? The infrastructure that we've come up with is very simple, and we've seen demonstrations of this in SEMAs earlier on this morning. We're working across a variety of terrestrial land cover types: grass, crop, peat, forest, and settlements. We collect the relevant in situ information here, and here we're working with prognostic eddy covariance data rather than the diagnostic meteorological network. So there's no singular institute that administered these networks typically. All of this data is pulled into an open data cube. We're currently sitting on Microsoft's Azure, and here we can develop those services: the catalog, the metadata, the visualization, but also the toolbox equivalents from the C3S data store, Jupyter notebooks. Let's not reinvent the wheel in terms of processing the satellite data. And these are recipes or cookbooks that we can use to deliver these wide range of services that are specific to specific needs. The end point here is ultimately this top bit: how do we advance the current state of modeling, where we take in not just those kind of traditional land cover, land use kind of data sets, but also start to factor in the human agency, because it's fundamentally the human agency that's going to drive the response of the landscape.
Right, and this is where I step in. So essentially what we're trying to do here, again, remember, we're going across 4 main terrestrial types. So it's agriculture, peatland, forestry, and urban areas. Some approaches will take one of those sectors, but what we're saying here is that it's better to take the sum of the parts. There's 2 really important things that we want to get across here. You need the proper research infrastructure. C3S provides some of the data streams that feed into that research infrastructure. The second thing, and this has been mentioned a few times, stakeholder engagement. We got to get that right. So we got to get that kind of co-design, that kind of involvement at an early stage from the agricultural companies, from the farmers, from the urban planners, from the municipal managers, right through to people that manage the wetlands, forestry, and so on. So here, the way we actually have set up Terrain AI is kind of a 4-piece push. On the extreme left, you'll see the benchmark sites, and those are kind of representative sites where we go in and measure different attributes at some detail, both in terms of like those greenhouse gas exchange, but also when we bring in the drones just to take a look at what's going on from a week-to-week, month-to-month basis, and of course higher up with satellite stuff. Open Data Cube is quite important. That's where we merge it all. We then move into the machine learning pipelines, where we kind of use these ML processes to break down those data and build up those more analysis, say, ready data sets and into the Earth system modeling. Finally, we come out the back door in terms of those scenarios, where we try to kind of take a look at all these what-if questions. Just find the green. Which is green, is it? Sorry, I'm blind. Benchmark networks. Okay, so this is in fact is like Roan's area. So these are representative sites, again, on farms, in forests, on peatlands and urban areas, and they've got a myriad of in situ sensors, soil right up to the flux towers. And again, what we try and do there is, like in seasonal times, go in with the drones just to take a look at the biomass, if it's grass or if it's crop. And so on. And again, remember what we're trying to do here is to kind of get these benchmark sites, if you like, the parallel is where these are the kind of like the circus tent poles, and then you get the analysis or the models then to drape over those poles to tell you what's going on in those spaces that you don't really know or don't have too much information about. So very, very quickly, the data platform, Inspire compliant. When we talk about data catalog, we actually talk about a digital catalog where it's not just data types, but we look at all of those bits that have to do with the workflows. So those Jupyter Notebook pieces, there's no point in reinventing the wheel each time you want to process data. So we want those inside in the catalog as well, so other users can benefit from those. And again, machine learning plays a key role here in trying to help us to break down those data sets to make a bit of sense. Back to you.
Yeah, I think the final two slides, so it's, all of this then is integrated up into this kind of common model framework. Here we use the WRF model, which many will be familiar with from the Eurocortex initiative. And effectively, we can take our individual soil carbon models, our gridded land surface models, but also transportation models that we run across these different sectors and integrate all of these data into this common framework, including our urban centers. Typically, they're treated as a concrete block in current models. Here, we're able to start to put the geography of the urban area back into these models, which is really important. The end goal here is effectively that if we've captured the terrestrial land surface and we have the cube of air over Ireland, we can now start to constrain or understand the emissions that are coming into the box off the Atlantic or in an easterly coming off the UK into Ireland. And we can verify our model against the four corners, the towers effectively that measure atmospheric CO2 around Ireland. And so far, this is an earlier run of the model. The model here is in red, the observations are in black, and we can see the model doing a reasonably job. So we can start to put error and uncertainty bounds around the national reporting initiatives. Key point here is what we've built here is scalable. We're using Ireland as a test bed to test these ideas, and we'd love to take this and transfer this to other jurisdictions.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it, guys.
Thank you. Is there any question? Atina? Yes. Okay.
Thank you. I'm Atina Trakas. I work for ECMWF, and you mentioned, that there's a lack of metadata and need for centralized data access, something like that. You were too fast. How is the connection to Inspire? You know, because we have the Inspire directive, and I wonder, this community has, or we have so much data. Mm-hmm. Is this fed into Inspire, or are we reinventing the Inspire wheel?
Right, so in fact it's probably the flip of that. So what we've done here is an implementation at a member state level in terms of terrain EI. So we've taken the Inspire schema and we've adapted that to take data sets that already exist in other organizations, other companies, and basically what we've done is like just put a Rolodex card, if you like. We don't necessarily kind of bring in the data and store it. So just to answer your question, we've just taken the Inspire schema and we've applied it at member state level, because remember, we're looking at Irish data here, but as Rowan said, this same architecture can be applied anywhere in Europe.
The key point as well is we're not dealing with existing networks that are well established, like the meteorological network. For example, we're working with the 80 covariance towers. These are typically run by institutions or researchers who are collecting data at an ecosystem level. They don't care about Inspire. What we want to do is actually bring these networks together, that we can actually use the full network. We have about 28 towers across Ireland. Right now, we can't even intercompare those towers because of processing. So if we can bring standards around how that data is collected with the site owners, we now start to develop those national scale databases. It's not about reinventing the wheel. ICOS have a European perspective on this. Only 4 sites of our 28 are ICOS compliant sites. So it's that space.
May I invite you to continue the discussion? No, it's really interesting. But okay, thank you. Sorry if I interrupt this. Okay, so let's move to the south, very far south of Europe. So we are in Greece now with Stergios Kartsios, sorry for the pronunciation, and he's going to bring us this national perspective.
Hello everyone, and thank you for the invitation. This one, okay. The Greek National Energy and Climate Plan is an important step towards the more ambitious 2030 energy and climate objectives under the European Green Deal and REPower EU plan. And in a nutshell, Greece has committed to decarbonize the electricity sector, and it has to achieve net zero emissions by 2050, while in the short term, Greece is committed to 44% of renewable energy production by 2030. And this target, this goal, I must say, is significantly above the target of the EU Commission, while for renewable energy sources, Greece targets up to 28 gigawatts by the end of this decade. Also, Greece aims to achieve 20% penetration of renewables in the country's energy mix by 2030. And last but not least, photovoltaic power will become the main source of renewable energy sources, and the share of wind power installed capacity is projected to be doubled in 2030 compared to the last years. However, the aforementioned pinpoint the increased dependence on weather and climate. And right now in Greece, there is no available service for the provision of forecasts in from seasonal to decadal timescales in terms of renewable energy production. So I won't elaborate much on this, but I would dare to say that the National Collaboration Program is an excellent opportunity for Greece to identify its needs and to develop specific climate services with regard to the C3S available datasets. And that's why we have submitted a proposal under the recent call of the NCP program. And the consortium consists of 4 Greek institutes: the National Observatory of Athens, the Academy of Athens, the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, the Hellenic Space Center, which is endorsed by the Ministry of Digital Governance, the national authority responsible for the microsatellite national program, and also the IDTCom Solutions Company. Moreover, this consortium is actively supported by the Ministry of Environment and Energy, which is the legislative national authority for the energy sector. So what we aim to do, we aim to design and develop a pre-operational prediction system based on the C3S available datasets, specifically the seasonal and decadal, the seasonal forecasts and decadal predictions, in order to address national needs in climate information regarding the renewable energy production. I won't get into much details here. However, the workflow considers the ingestion of reanalysis data, seasonal forecast and prediction and decadal predictions, strong engagement with national authorities like the Ministry of Environment and the Greek Ministry of Environment and Energy and the Ministry of Digital Governance. And in order to identify new user needs in national and also some subnational levels, and with the ultimate goal to provide, let's say, near-term predictions on renewable energy energy production also and on demand. And with that, I will thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sergios. Any question? No? Okay, thank you very much. So we close this short tour around Europe. We come back here in Brussels. Our goal is really to support all the countries to concretely uptake C3S product at national level for their own mandate and for their own action. To do so, we want also to coordinate this kind of action, and we want to promote exchange between the different countries. So we set up a joint coordination office, and we have a contractor that is supporting us to do so. And I leave the floor to Linda van Duivendobode. She is a consultant at DotSpace, and she's really supporting us in starting this discussion around Europe. Linda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Christina. Yes, so I'm here also on behalf of Delphine Dering from ECMWF, who unfortunately cannot be here today. So I'll be presenting both for her and for the support that we provide to ECMWF. And it was very nice, the previous speaker, as an endorsement already of what I'm here trying to sell to you, which is the Joint Coordination Office run by ECMWF and its aims. And then I'll also introduce the support that we provide to that and to you as member countries in the uptake of C3S in national policies. So the aim really here, so the keywords here are a national collaboration, the national collaboration program that has been mentioned already a few times, which I hope that people see the value of not just as a funding instrument, but also as an exchange mechanism, as a collaboration, a co-design program that allows the exchange of information and knowledge also between the countries themselves. But certainly the funding will be part of it. The other keyword here is ecosystems, which I will get back to also in another slide. So as DotSpace, we provide the support contract to ECMWF. We don't do this alone. We have a consortium of 4 partners which are comprised of VITO, IS Global in Spain, and the Helmholtz Center for Climate Services, Herion in Germany. In the room today, I have with me Katja Rutkaskaya from DotSpace, stand up, Laura Chica from IS Global, and Philippe Lefebvre from VITO. Okay, they're very shy at the moment, but they'll warm up to you, I'm sure. Yeah, and so the broad outline of our activities is, is this a dynamic? Ah, yes. The broad outline of our activities are the 2 work packages. One is the forum. Some of you may have heard about this already. Forum is really a get-together of all the member states. So this is to exchange information with all the member states and have a dialogue and co-design of activities. And the second one will be one-to-one between ECMWF and countries that are interested. It's open to all the 30 member countries of ECMWF. But of course we have to stagger the program in a way that covers the 4 years, because we won't be able to deal with all bilateral dialogues in the first couple of months. Oh yeah, and this is a very important one. I can tell that some of you are already very interested in this. So the funding program, the first call has been already opened in March and closed in last May. And tomorrow, when we have our first forum meeting, will also be the input then for the next. And actually, Sam after me will tell a little bit more about this. The call for action, and the aim of this is really to co-design the actions that you are looking for together with you. So I cannot stress enough the words dialogue, co-design, and engagement, because it's also about not just you here in the room, but also the people back in your country. We heard several times already over the last few days that From climate science to climate action, we really need this whole chain that was shown by Rutger, where we go from the producer all the way to the action that we need ultimately to adapt to climate change. I'm going to flip through because right, yeah. So this is the kind of the core of the Joint Coordination Office and the collaboration program. The pillar 1 was introduced by Rutger earlier already. Pillar 2 is what we will be working on, hopefully together with you. 3 is the training that is already offered by ECMWF in MOOCs, and Jupyter notebooks were mentioned. And 4 is something that will start later this year. And as I said already, the first forum will be tomorrow morning. It is a closed event. It is meant for selected representatives from the member states. They are selected by the Copernicus User Forum, and really the aim is that they are there as ambassador for your country, and then hopefully also communicate back to you what the program is about and start creating ecosystems. So ecosystem is really a strong part of our approach, and we have termed this as entrepreneurial ecosystems. And by entrepreneurial, we don't mean that all of you need to now go away and start your own business, by no means. But it does mean a certain mindset that you can adopt. And the entrepreneurial mindset means that you are proactively seeking collaboration with other actors in this triple helix, as it's also well known, to ultimately come to operational climate services. Because if we want to support policy at national level, we need to come to operational climate services. And you clearly, as scientists, have a very important role to play in that process. So this is really a summary of our activities that we'll be undertaking in the next 4 years. The bold ones are the key ones that are the bilateral dialogue, the forum, expert workshops, and then the support activities that we want to develop around it with the engagement, information, exchange of information, and anything also that you can come up with and can ask for. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Is there any question for Linda? No? Okay. So, last speaker, Samuel Almond is a senior scientist at ECMWF and is going to present us the proper national collaboration program.
So it's me again, and I do apologize. Hopefully this is the penultimate time I'll be back on the stage. So my job is quite easy. I've had 2 really good speakers go before me to talk about the NCP, its aims, objectives. So what I'm going to be talking about, if we can go to the next slide, please. Or is that me? Sorry. Brilliant. So what I'm going to be talking about is the roadmap, where we go from the inception of the NCP, the C3S NCP, to implementing it as a series of contracts. Which one? Oh, the big green one. Duh. So essentially, imagine this is a timeline. So this is up to the end of this year. And to date, we've launched 1 ITT. So this ITT is based upon the initial discussions with the member states. It's based on a survey that was sent around the end of last year. And the idea is that we gather the initial requirements from the member states to produce this first call. Within this first call, there were 2 actions. The first action was the uptake of C3S services and products at the national level. And the second was the other way, to exposing national data sets in our ecosystem. So whether this be in the climate data store or our web pages. And Paul Polly mentioned yesterday about the in situ and data rescue activities within C3S, and there was a particular emphasis on supporting these activities because the member states have a really rich network and records of climate data. So that's one thing we really want to leverage. And also the second thing, which is quite interesting, is we are open to exposing high-resolution climate projections within the CDS. So this is something we'd like to explore in the future. And I've had a couple of words with a few of you in the room about how we can leverage this and support national climate projections and climate services as well within the ecosystem of the NCP. So at the moment, the first round of proposals are being evaluated, and these hopefully will lead to the contract starting in Q3 later this year. But these go on for 24 months, and these contracts will really focus on impact, making sure that the money we put into the NTP leads to tangible outcomes, and make sure they lead to exposure for C3S, but also for the people who are implementing the contracts. And one of the key things we're looking at the evaluation is impact, its communication potential, and its sustainability of these services going forwards. Okay, so there's going to be a next call for action in 2025 and one again in 2026. So I expect the one for 25 come out later in this year, so please keep an eye out for it. Okay, this is a homage to my colleagues in the seasonal forecast. So the idea is that these calls are initialized. We know what the member states may want, but as we get towards releasing the ITTs, the needs and requirements may change. So we can't really tell you here and now what the topics in these calls in the future will be, but we have a strong idea. We've got some insight to what these may be. And the first higher probability of a topic will be downscaling of projections to support national impact planning. And I've had a discussion with a few of you. What we're not trying to do, I can reassure people here, we're not going to do a pan-European high-resolution climate projections for the whole of Europe. We're not going to be standing on member states' toes, national Met services, but we'll work with people who don't have the capabilities to develop these for their own purposes. So that's something we need to do. But we also need to make sure that we bring the community with us. We will be supporting initiatives such as Cordex, such as good practice WMO standards, to ensure that we implement these in a sustainable way which we bring the community with us. The next, we'll be looking at transnational challenges, so cooperation between member states to ensure that we can address these big challenges at the regional scale that member states can't do by themselves. And the last point is that the uptake of C3S products will be an ongoing theme throughout the calls that we implement. And that's it. Thank you.
Wait, is there any question for Sam? No? Okay, with this, I think that we can close this session perfectly in time, and I give back the floor to you. Yes.
I'm so sorry for this. Right. You'd think by the end of the day I would be less nervous, but I'm not, so there we go. Right, so we're getting to the crunch part of the day. Before we pass on to the last final session that Stain's going to be moderating, I do have some awards for the best poster. So, we do have a drum roll. So, the evaluators have identified 3 exceptional posters. Not to say that the rest weren't exceptional, the quality was fantastic. And I think big round of applause to everyone who submitted a poster and demo for this session. So if I mention your name, could you please come up and everyone can see who you are, and I will usher you into the coordination team's office to collect your prize, which I don't know what it is. I can't vouch for the quality, but I'm sure it'll be great. So there's 3 different types of projects represented in the posters. One is related to user requirements. The second is related to machine learning, and the third is related to the ECVs. So first and foremost, I'd like to invite Rutger to come up to the stage, please, for a poster titled User Engagement and the Collection of User Requirements for C3S. Rutger, any words?
I haven't prepared a welcome speech or a thank you speech, but I'll think about it.
Okay, brilliant. So thank you very much, Rutger.
Yeah.
Right. The second poster who receives awards is the C3S Satellite Soil Moisture Service by Alina, EODC. So, Alina. I won't ask you to make a speech. But thank you, Elena. And the last poster was a bit contentious. There was a bit of, I think, some underhand sort of bribery going on or something, because one of the judges thought it was an excellent poster. The second felt a bit conned because there was no mention of Arnold Schwarzenegger at all in the poster. So Peter Thorne, do you want to come up and collect your poster for AI and climate data rescue?
There was Arnold Schwarzenegger in the poster. Also, it was mainly Kevin Healy, and so he'll get the prize.
Well, obviously the review wasn't done thorough enough, was it? So, all right, thank you to everybody. So this is, I promise, the last time I'm going to say anything today. Last session, I hand over to Stein Vermoto.
The last session starts with a panel, so I'll wait for the chairs to be prepared. I hope you're still fresh enough after long, long days of listening and tasting Belgian beer. So as you have noticed, this year was very much focused on one side, on what we provide in C3S, and on the other side, on how we do the journey together with our users to bring these climate services closer to their needs, both on political level or societal level. And you saw through different presentations, be it on the products, we invited users, we invited stakeholders. We had now also a very nice session about the NCP and on partnerships. But with this final session, which in the first place will be a panel, and then Carlo will also do some final words, we also would like to listen and to look a little bit more forward. So what would be the new challenge approaches for us as C3S to advance further and to see how we can create even more added value to meet evolving societal and policy needs. So that's the topic of the panel. It won't be presentations, it will be 4 high-level speakers who will talk about from their angle and give their vision on how we should advance further on C3S. So with this, I would like to introduce the 4 speakers. They're being prepared in the meantime. I'll wait a bit. Besides the presentations they will give or short statements, you will also be given the opportunity to take the floor and to ask some questions to the panelists. But I also invite the panelists to ask questions to you. So it should also be the opposite way. Because in the end, as mentioned several times throughout the 3 days, this is a general assembly. In French, it's even better, Assemblée Générale. So we come together as a community. So we are C3S all together. And that's why it's also very important for these panelists to ask questions to you as an audience. And I hope by this, we can start with the speakers. So the first is Philip Tulkens. He is the head of DG RTD and Innovation, Climate and Planetary Boundaries of the European Commission. Yeah. The second speaker is Inge Jonkheren. She's the head of Green Solution Divisions Division Climate Action, Sustainability and Science Department at the European Space Agency. The third speaker is Usui Donezar. She is the head of the Copernicus Land Monitoring Service at the EEA. And the last will be Tobias Bierman, and he is policy officer at DGDF of the European Commission, of course. So, welcome. Welcome to our General Assembly. I first would like to hear from you, based on what you heard. I hope you heard it when I introduced you. So what do you see as potential new approaches for us, all of us, at C3S, on how we can create even more added value to meet the new challenges of our society and policy? Philippe, maybe you can start.
Thank you, Stan. Well, you heard so many things. I'm not sure I will be fully creative, but I will insist on one point that probably you heard before in the introductory session with Adina Bartram. So we work with the team on what is called the EU Mission on Adaptation to Climate Change. And this mission goes beyond what research and innovation normally offers and can fund. It brings transformative change on the ground. And we have now a good group of 311 regions and local entities participating to the mission, and they are the end users of all kinds of services, technical assistance, information on what they should do to progress in their preparedness to climate impacts and increase their resilience. So the added value that this type of services can bring is really to relate to the end users, meet their needs, test new solutions with them, and the demand is enormous on their side, but they don't know really how to access the services, how to use it. They need also people in their administration to test the services, and making this link is probably, in my view, how the services could be best acknowledged and bring added value. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. Inge, the perspective from ESA.
Yes. So thanks very much for inviting me. So I'm glad to be here. I'm also in a new role, because for people who haven't seen me or don't know me, I recently joined ESA 3 months ago. I'm the new head of the Green Solutions Division. And so it's a division who was earlier called Data Application. So I think already in the name change, you can see that we go to a new era, I would say, also a new era for ESA. So for ESA, the R&D, of course, is crucial, and I think that really is the link also with the climate services. So not only the R&D before the services, but also once they're in place. Also bringing this to the business, and also see more and more how businesses can be integrated also to see an economic option really to lever and help this green transformation. Because as you also know, we were talking before, also the accelerator. I think it's a great initiative in which ESA can really link up to the climate services and all the other collaborative partners and partnerships already ongoing, but also the new ones. And then maybe lastly, what also an upcoming and a new thing is, as we all know, there's a lot of deep fake AI images circulating. We do know that Earth observation has a very big role in the MRV, so the monitoring, the reporting, and verification of all this. So there's really also a need for a certification, let's say, procedure. And I think also ESA, together with the Copernicus services, can really play a big role there to play that role also to the climate finance. So that's my view on this.
Thank you, Inge. Usui.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like first to thank you for inviting me to this panel discussion. And I'm going to be giving some examples from the European Environmental Agency perspective. Because we are at the EEA, we are not only producers but also users of the Copernicus services. So in that sense, what we are doing is we are working towards bringing the Copernicus services towards the member states and also the EEA stakeholders. As one of the examples is the European Climate Risk Assessment, in which we have been participating, we have been doing, and it was mainly based also on climate change, Copernicus climate change data. We are also addressing different policies through indicators by combining data from CLMS, from atmosphere, and from the climate change. And this is all included in this frame of these new policies where we are asked to integrate more and to have more this broad perspective across. So not only to be talking not only about our own expertise or our own domain, to be more about work more together. And this is also how to be seen in the frame of Copernicus, how could we do it together in the next MFF, in Copernicus 3.0. For the time being, the European Environment Agency has signed a memorandum of understanding with the ECMWF to specifically talk about this and to see how can we create more links between Copernicus and the different policy sides and files. And I just want to finish with something that actually the previous presenter, one of the previous presenters said, which was very interesting. I think that from the perspective of my colleagues on climate change, adaptation to climate change, the message we want to bring here is that we need to increase, to raise the level of the data integration, to increase the level of the information and include other data as well. So we are now need to still go one step beyond this production of products and include also data from other sources such as socioeconomic data.
Thank you, Sui. And Tobias.
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot to ECMWF for organizing this event. I think it was so brilliant to see so many people and also to learn so much what you do all about user uptake, what was a big concern. And with the NCPs and all the things I heard today, I think we see that a lot of things are really progressing well. And on your question, how we can improve some of the use of the C3S services, I would like to start with institutional users, where we can do something, and I have a long policy experience within the European Commission, and I would like to structure this a bit in the way we have European policies. And we have in the climate area, first of all, targets, policy targets, and I think one of the most important targets of the EU and the Green Deal, together with Paris Agreement, is this 1.5 degree target. And I think here really C3S is the reference really to show that we have as C3S a tool that can prove where we are now with the implementation of this temperature measurement. So I think this is such a fantastic reference. We should promote more, and we have in national but also EU legislation a lot of other targets, mainly in the area of greenhouse gases, 55% climate neutrality, and I think here also C3S could link on to work closer on targets. The second point would be then incentives, or the last one then legislation, so carrots and sticks. So we really from the EU would like to do a lot of things to work against climate change. And as regards incentives, the most important thing I think where we should explore more is all what is related at the EU level to emission trading. We have a carbon price that is too low, that should be much higher, and I think we should really do all the monitoring we do, a bit linked also to the carbon market and the carbon prices, because I think I see really a lot of potential. The price today is 68 euros, but many people think it should be 10 times higher, that we move in the area of climate change a lot of things. And the third thing I mentioned is then the stick, the legislation. In the last 5 years, the Commission issued about 350 legislative proposals, and only in a very few Copernicus appeared, often just in recital, like in the last one on climate reporting and farming, where it just appeared, in recital, Copernicus should be taken into account. But I think really for this community, which should really more systematic mapping, as it started now also with DG Klima, to really see where we can really link in the tools we have and the monitoring we can do here with legislation, because I think this is a very important tool. And when we have some things mandatory to use Copernicus, this will really then give a big wave how Copernicus will be used further. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So it's very nice to see your different angles and where you're coming from. And based on this, I would like to pose some follow-up questions. And we collected some of these questions this morning, so it's a mix between my own reflections from this week, as well as some reflections from colleagues in the audience. So I will start again with you, Tobias. One element which was apparent, and it was already apparent on Monday, both Elina Bartram from DG Klima as well as Elisabeth Hamduk from DG DFI mentioned that there is also a role to play by the downstream market. And the downstream market often is driven by small SMEs, small companies, consultants, spin-offs of universities who try to develop climate services based on what we provide. There are certain activities. You have Cassini, for example. This is one element. But how can we, as C3S, also support this further to make sure that what we develop in our service is really picked up by the downstream market, and especially to reach all these policy needs. So also to reflect the role of the private sector to reach that endpoint. So what can we do together with other colleagues to achieve this?
Yeah, I think already Elisabeth mentioned it on Monday that we have now the EUSPA, the European Space Program Agency, who should support us now with the downstream market and uptake. And they have a lot of interesting activities like the user consultation platform and a lot of things. And they have their market segments, and this is now coming also into play. And I think it's first, of course, it's important to liaise closely also with the activities under EUSPA. But I think it's just one element. I think we have so many interesting things, and what I hear just today, there are so many other interesting elements on the user uptake where I think we should really continue not only looking at the EUSPA, but really to do a lot what I heard here on stakeholder engagement and all these interaction what we just was presented. I think this is fantastic. No? And we have also this question on demand. No? We really should really see what really users want, and I think it's a bit more complex because I think we need to combine a bit things. We not think just about climate issues, but really combine this more with energy, with water, with agriculture, with health, and we really need to think that we need to have products that are really for the users. No? And just on the information, I think we are not so bad. I looked into the figures. I think this morning they mentioned 160,000 users for the ERA 5. So I think it's already, I looked into the new Copernicus data space ecosystem, our new commission system. And today we had in the dashboard 178,000 users. So it's already something. No? So we cannot say we do nothing. So, and I think in the future, especially then with the use of AI, all this data use will getting much easier, and with that, I think we will really see a big push in the next years.
Thank you, Tobias. For you, Isu, you mentioned that we signed an MOU, so a Memorandum of Understanding, but of course our engagement goes back much, much further in time, and especially on C3S, we have a very well-established link on climate adapts. We have the Copernicus hubs on which we also collaborate. We have the Climate and Health Observatory on which we collaborate. But something which also appeared throughout some of the presentations was your AONet, which is a rich established network on how you link with the different countries. So how can we build in this element which you manage at EA also to make sure that we at C3S help to spread, in fact, the uptake of our data?
Yeah, well, I think so. The best, it's actually one of the biggest assets that, well, not one of the biggest, but one of the assets that the European Environment Agency has is that with this very well-built network, which is IONET, and all the how this helps us also to develop further. Just to give you an example, the National Collaboration Program for the CLMS is going to be done also through the IONET. And that allows us to put in contact two communities which are not the same, or not necessarily the same as the Copernicus User Forum people and the people from IONET, which is an added value. I think that we need to explore together with you and also with other Copernicus services if needed, if they want to, how we can also, through us, make use of this IONET for you within the national collaboration programs. And I think that this builds on this idea that has been recently presented on these transboundary topics on the national collaboration program, which go beyond that a typical topic that you would be thinking of, so geographically speaking, transboundary. It's also about the inter-service type of activities. And in that sense, it would make really a lot of sense to have, to help you also to reach those people.
Okay, thank you. Inge, you mentioned verification, and this was a very interesting topic, also to fight against the deepfake, which is there, indeed. We also had the talk, Maciej, about DG Klima's priorities. We both serve DG Klima, and how can we help DG Klima with what you mentioned on verification, but also what we do at C3S to make sure that we serve DG Klima together and to make sure that we provide a European answer to help policy needs?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of these things, it comes from my former life. As you know, I was at the user side, so I was working 15 years in UN, helping countries to set up these reports, mainly for big agreements like UNFCCC, and it always comes back to national reporting. So that goes for non-Annex 1, but also European countries to really report. So one of the things we see there is that more and more, of course, rightly, because of the services, EO data is used as like a proof of we're doing good, we're on track. So basically, one of the things that now comes in is that, and I think in that sense, DG Klima, together with all the partners, we can really look into this and make sure that the reporting that's done and that's going to be done in the future really has, like, I would say, like a certification timbre or like a stamp, like, look, this is really real data, it's based on real information, because otherwise we could see that also the in-situ data will take a way bigger role than it has already now, because some of the countries, especially in Europe, use mainly the in-situ data, and so to really come through there with, like, I would almost say a package, which is certified by maybe can be DG Klima, can be done together with the Copernicus to show that it's really the data that can be the proof and then lead to former, let's say, even the climate finance.
Yeah, interesting. And you were alluding to in your role at FAO, and of course there's the link also with the Global South. So do you think we as Copernicus should do more for the Global South and to make sure that there is more uptake? Because on one side you can say, well, Copernicus is a global program, by definition. Focuses, of course, also quite a lot on Europe because of various reasons. But how can we make sure that C3S is really also used in the Global South better?
Well, it's an interesting discussion we before already had a bit. It's also like, who's the main party to bring this over? Like, we're talking a lot about users, talk about these services. For example, one of the agencies where I was working, the FAO, is really looking at options to really bring to these people. So I think, and also from what I hear, everybody's doing capacity building, everybody's doing these development aid, but I think we should team up much more, because every time someone goes to a country, you can see that there's a variety of methods about tools, and everybody is very keen to give their tool. So I really do think that Copernicus and the services, it's already been doing, because as I said, it's very open, it's an open data access, so all these things really make that it can be taken up. Unfortunately, we need people to go there and to really have it. So I don't know how much budget there is for that capacity building in this context. Maybe it should not be the Copernicus people, but allying with a partner, as for example UN, they really do that work. So I think that would be a great advantage. And of course, we can also do more than what we do now. So.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Amy. So, Philippe, we were talking now about the global element and global commitments and what we can do at a global scale. And with your head from DGRTD, maybe you can say something about an idea which was raised yesterday by Paco Dobles Reyes. And we had, I don't know if you have seen it, probably not, but there was a presentation about operational climate projections and how this can help us to push forward on our global commitment for climate mitigation policy. Is this something where you, with with your head from DGRTD, but also knowing what it means in practice. So going from research to operations, is this something where you see the Copernicus community to advance on?
Yes, for sure. If I may take a little bit of liberty, I would like to say a few words on the previous question that you asked. First, on the involvement of the private sector. I refer to the mission on adaptation to climate change. There are also other missions in the areas of the Green Deal. This is fundamental. The missions are about deploying solutions, and so far, I have to admit that we didn't manage to involve all this ecosystem of SMEs active in your areas here on this mission. I really call them to pay attention to the calls that are currently open until the 18th of September in the mission. They are great opportunities for private companies, big ones, small ones, and they can test products through the mission. That's one. On, you very diligently mentioned DG Klima and serving DG Klima, and we are friends of DG Klima, of course. But I want to remind everyone that we are all serving the European project, and it's the European Union policy. Whether it's implemented through one DG or another one, people don't care. And we do work very well, in particular with DG Klima on this mission. And this mission should not be seen by an instrument, or it's not an instrument, by an initiative by DG Research. It's a Commission initiative where all services, including DG DEFIS, including ECHO, including others, are all pushing in the same direction to progress transformative change for increasing the resilience and preparedness. And about the global perspective, I'm getting there. Yes, I think Copernicus has a great importance there, but there are still many problems with the data, in particular ground-based data, in situ data. I was recently in a meeting with the Vice President Šefčovič about the role of Earth observation for reducing the reporting obligations of the member states. And I was a bit surprised that some senior policymakers have the impression that we can just remove a lot of the reporting obligation because space observation will replace all this. This is not true yet. And scientists like you need to tell the politicians at local level, at national level, that it's not that simple. And we need to progress in the services to improve the basis of data, the access to the data as well, in particular in some parts of the world where this is less represented. And this gives an opportunity for Copernicus to develop tailor-made services in those areas based on the data that they may have collected and involve the end users in the process, and that will add a lot of value and a lot of acknowledgement on the usefulness of Copernicus services. Now that I have covered all the questions, I get to the question that was addressed to me about operational projections. And I remember the question. It's, at my age, it's not that bad. So, of course, I mean, we know that we need these projections. A great effort has been done in modeling on improving the resolution, and we have been funding this, and we will continue to fund this. But there, we also should not pass the illusion to policymakers that the resolution will solve all the problems. I often have to address this issue, and why are you skeptic? No! There's no simple solution. High resolution is needed. Destination Earth will bring improvement, but not miracles. We need to continue to work on the science, on the representation of processes in models, and so on. And, of course, test the projections in an operational matter with the end users. And they will see whether there are real improvements or not. The danger with Destination Earth, and I'm being very frank with that, is that with the beautiful visualization, we give the impression that we know the science better. No, good visualization is needed, but it's not sufficient to improve the operationalization of the modeling. Thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. Your messages are clear. All right. I would like to give the audience time to ask additional questions. So maybe based on what you heard now, you have some additional reflections and you would like to use the opportunity to ask them. Marché? The microphone, please. Is it on?
Hello. So DigiClima was mentioned too many times. I have to respond. So thank you, Philip, for mentioning that it's a collective effort. And the example of that is, in particular, the cities. I also asked the difficult question to Belgium on how the cities are cooperating with the sort of an in situ data. And we are really looking for that the European cities, not knowing that some data also are collected by the cities, this data can be then combined with the Earth observation remote sensing data, provide additional value. So this is an example that shows that we are acting as a one organism towards some really like problems that are arising. The example of that data we had last year, I don't know if you remember, Carlo, in Brno is collecting this, the information about the hotspots, heat hotspots. Mm-hmm. And this information also can be combined with remote sensing data. There are various data that should be combined also from transport perspective, from the perspective of the biodiversity as well, which is, can protect us against the adverse effect of the heat as well.
Okay, thank you, yes. So investment in green space is also important. Carlo?
Yeah, thank you. I have a question, and in a sense is linked to something that has happened throughout the GA, I feel, and it's the fact that the landscape around us is changing, most noticeably with the new Commission. So the political priority will be changing, and the service will need to readapt to a different reality. So I would like to know from the panelists, what do you think should be the priority for the service in reorganizing and readdressing the changing priority of the Commission? Because climate change won't change, and it will stay there, or will keep changing, to say better, and it will stay there irrespective of the political priorities.
Philippe, you want to?
I know I exhausted my time. I asked for 30 seconds extra. Indeed. To put it in few words, we are used to repackaging the way we present things, because climate crisis is there. It won't go away because of the election. It will come back, and it will depend on when summer will start in Belgium, actually. It has not started yet. But indeed, framing the issue under the competitiveness angle is important. That's why I insisted on the role of the private sector for the mission, because these are new markets. These are developing fast. There's a lot of added value for the EU in this, based on the investment on Copernicus, which is a massive investment. Now we need to get the return on this investment. This can be framed, but it needs to be done in with the integration of the do no significant harm principle in mind. Because if it is about stimulating growth and competitiveness in the old way of thinking, we are not progressing in any way. We are going backwards. So to do this smartly is to frame the message on the economic added value of the new services, but frame them in a context that contributes to the implementation of the Green Deal.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good point. Thank you. Yeah. Are there some other questions?
I would like to,
yeah?
Sorry, Stan, if I may,
yes, sorry,
because
sorry.
I'm usually introduced, and that's true, as the person responsible of CLMS at the European Environment Agency. But I want to highlight that at the EA we are also responsible for the in situ component, and that's very important. It has been mentioned several times. We are now so until now it's true that in situ was. Not only, well, the scope of the in situ, so actually you see it in the name. So we give coordination, we coordinate the access of in situ data for Copernicus services. So it's not that we are creating in situ data, we are coordinating this access and giving access to other data, signing agreements, and so on and so forth. And even if in the both previous agreements, this was very limited in scope, I would say. What we want now is to enlarge the scope in a way as much as we are allowed by the fees, of course, but and target more precise needs of each of the services. So up until now, we were doing small projects addressing different aspects, more sometimes even showcasing what could be done. And now what we want is to change that perspective towards having larger projects specifically on topics that will serve specific aspects within that service. And I can give you an example. For the CLMS, for the land, we are going to be checking crowdsourcing data for validation of mowing events and of crop diversity and crop rotation and diversification. So these type of projects, which are very ad hoc and can have a larger scope than in the past, we will also have them with the other services. And actually, I know that the colleague who is in charge of that has already been having meetings with colleagues from the climate change to specifically address that. So just to bear in mind that there is also an option there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for these additional reflections. Institute is, of course, very important from the verification point of view. Yeah. Jan, you have a question?
Is it on? Yep. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Follow-up question on the question of Carlo, and then the answer by Philippe. I think, yes, so priority might change based on politic reality, and then the solution might be to involve the private sector and work on the accelerators or new products that make sense. But still, as our state secretary also mentioned in his speech, the green parties basically didn't get a lot of votes, it's quite low, etc. So we somehow failed in reaching the crowd. And also there are other political urgencies, like you mentioned also in a follow-up panel. There are socioeconomic challenges, etc. But still, how can we deal with fake news? So Inge already mentioned fake images, but fake news. How can we reach people? How can we create awareness? And it's true, climate change will come back and will hit us anyway, somehow. But still, how can we deal with this societal challenge, basically?
Inge?
You asked me? Yeah. Yeah, this is a very good one, and I know we talked a lot about it. So one of the big things, so you were saying also scientists have said that in situ data is crucial. I think scientists, climate scientists have to stand up and speak up. And I talk for myself. I know that I'm not always been the best to explain what we're doing and also talk the talk and walk the walk. So I think also by showing and leading the example is one of the things, but also really make sure that people understand how much, for example, in this part with Copernicus service of Earth observation data in general is important already in everyday life. So I'm doing my best to talk so much with media to really on a very low scale that people understand, because too often I think people think that scientists are somewhere in ivory tower and doing their uncertain, let's say, conclusions, which is also not a message policymakers or policy owners want to hear. And as you know, in the IPCC, so I'm an IPCC lead author, we're very, very cautious on how you formulate it, because that's how scientists work. There's always the uncertainty, which is the first part, but people cannot take uncertainty, especially not in these uncertain times we're in. So I think it's a common effort. I think you can only do it by really leading the example and showing the importance of all this. And as said, with that competitiveness, the only thing that will save us, I think, is when we link it to economics. Because that's unfortunately also, well, being Belgian too, I know that this whole election was won because people care about what's in their wallet and what's coming up. So if you link it to economical values, and this is something which in the last IPCC report was done for the first time, so in that sense, there's hope, because some countries reduced their emissions, so in order to get to the 1.5, as we heard from Tobias, by increasing their economical growth. So it's possible. It's just that change that needs to be done. So linked to this competitiveness, so we need to encourage private sector because they go, unfortunately, quicker than the public. And really to help these businesses make business out of services, for example, from Copernicus, in order to lead this transformation. So there's so many business opportunities in it. And if I think from the Belgian Climate Center, there was a report on that. So what these new businesses could do really to increase this, also the speed and also the whole transformation. So there is even an economical business model in it. And I think only when we hook up to that, we will get the whole community with us, because unfortunately people have to eat, have to live, and have to pay all for this. So by telling that in long-term climate might do wrong, it's not gonna be the big message.
Talking about competitiveness and stimulating the market, Tobias, can you add something on this?
Yeah, I think we have this new discussion about competitiveness, and I think it's really important for us that we now really think in the next MFF and the new commission, what will come, that we really have to realize that we will have competition not only looking at the private sector things, but I think also in all of our commission space program, we will have so many other activities like communication and navigation, IRIS², that we will even have also within the Commission and with the EU member states a financial competition, what will be financed in the next time. And therefore I think it's very important that we, for Copernicus, have a good narrative. What are we doing? Climate change will not go away, will increase, so we will have good arguments, but I think we need really a good story to explain what our services, and they also really well reflect. We have now designed our 6 Copernicus services. Why do we do this? Where is the border with the private sector? We have also contributing missions. We have other things we can use, and I think we really need next year a good story, a good narrative to explain really what are we doing and why it's important. But I'm really convinced that C3S and the climate monitoring is one of the hearts that need to be there and that will be there, but I think we need to have a good narrative.
Yeah, and of course through the National Collaboration Program we also stimulate competitiveness at the country level. So we build capacity, we make sure that the national authorities or the meteorological services make connection with what we do at European level. So they also, it's a little bit like the cohesion funds, so we make sure that all the countries reach a certain level that they can take the best up from these services. Not only in the classic countries where climate services are strong. So this is also a clear message which we saw in some of the statistics, I think, from Wageningen University, where the uptake, I think, from Eastern Europe was significantly too low. And that's one of the things we want to tackle in the NCP. I want to take the last question there in the back, yes?
Is it on? Yeah? I couldn't agree with you more about your love of the in situ data. So I think that's really very important. And in the in situ contracts, we are in contact with all the Met services in Europe. But what we see is that especially for the smaller Met services, it's sometimes very difficult to comply with the new regulations simply because of lack of resources. But in our activities outside of Europe or outside the EU, we think that these problems are even more severe. So we have some contacts in the Caribbean or in places in Africa or in Southeast Asia, and what we see is that it's very, very tough to get your hands on some decent in situ data. So given that Copernicus is a global has the global perspective, as you said, how would you see your role in this revolutionary new idea of the WMO, of the SOF, the Systematic Observations Finance Facility, where the making of observations is financed in a completely different way than now? So how do you see the role of DG Klima in that?
Well, I'm not in DG Klima. So that's an easy answer. I will pass it on to my colleagues, but I will not avoid the question. First, I mean, I'm in DG Research Innovation, so we deal with Horizon Europe, this program, and you know that all the projects that we fund have a duration of 4 or 5 years. And it's not actually the good way to fund in situ collection of data and observations. This is done mostly at the level of the member states, if not only at the level of the member states. This is a long-standing issue. And when WMO approached us for this initiative at the global level, actually I kindly invited them to contact my colleagues from DG INPA, International Partnerships, who can fund this type of activities. That is the reality. So you may say that in the member states there are too little investment on these issues. This is true. And you may ask, can the Commission do something? The answer is probably not. And so there is a gap. And nobody wants to fund this. It's not that expensive, it's needed. And therefore, I think it's important to bring the topic back to the level of the member states, because if we don't improve the data coverage and the collection of in situ data, the rhythm of progress of the climate services based on observation will not be as fast as it could be.
And how realistic is this view, do you think? Because
well,
many med servers are now making money on their data.
Probably, if I understood well your accent, you're Dutch. So the perspective about funding more, the EU from the Netherlands, I don't know, it's difficult to speculate, but they look at this. Yes, I mean, we need to have a frank discussion. Either they can give a mandate to the Commission to invest in those activities, but it's not the type of mandate that we receive, or they have to decide whether the member states wish to fund this or through international organizations such as the WMO, but that becomes really an issue that is beyond what I can speak about as Commission official.
All right, we can talk about SOF afterwards. ECMWF is supporting it from its side as well, providing free data. And I'm talking here about the NWP data. But let's take it offline, because I think I would like to move to the last stage, and we still have 8 minutes left. I would like to give you the floor to ask questions to us, to the community. So, a question to us, to how we should, what we think that we should improve to make it more relevant for your needs or for the partnerships that you have.
I have a question. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not prepared. I didn't receive the question before. No, I can promise. Or I didn't see it in my emails, actually. My question is following. Based on the previous intervention, do you think that Copernicus could develop more service that contain a socioeconomic component? Because this is what people relate to. Services on vulnerability, on the impacts on the day-to-day life, on choices. We all use apps before taking a bike ride or so on, buoyant alarm or others. There are other apps. These are extremely helpful to mobilize people on weather and climate issues. But the socioeconomic component needs to be embedded in the service. If that could be developed, I mean, we'll be a winning team.
No, it's one of these things when a question is asked to a group of people, then there is the question of who's going to answer. So I'm volunteering. I think it's a very good question. And in a sense, we have made a conscious decision in C3S not to get there, because we thought that we couldn't provide reliable information about socioeconomic. That's not our area of expertise, but it's definitely a great possibility for us, and links back to the private sector we were touching on a minute ago. Because if you want to add this socioeconomic element, if you want to add the information about the bike sharing or the rooftop solar panel or anything else, then there are plenty of companies out there who can provide that information, and partnering with them can be part of the solution, can be, actually is key. So yes, but not alone. It's not something we will do alone, because our expertise is on the climate, and we want to that expertise to be ring-fenced and protected.
I think you all agree, no? Another question for us?
Yeah.
For the community? Yeah?
Okay, so I'll use my ESA hat, which was formerly a user perspective hat more. So my question is easy, I think. So do we need better data? And so do we really think that with getting all these better data, there will be better decisions? It's a bit provocative because it's a paper I wrote just before leaving FAO, and I think I was working then in the RED, so reduction of emissions in deforestation and degradation. And basically, one of the main bottlenecks we see is that it's a big lack of political will that's hampering all this. It's not having the daily wall-to-wall high resolution to 1 centimeter level that's going to bring people to do better decisions. So that's something, at least, especially in my new role, it's something we have to think of. And then especially with the Commission, by launching, well, you've probably all seen the successful launch of EarthCare, so we're very happy, very pleased. It was 20 years of work. So hopefully it will bring new data, so it will bring also better decisions.
So your answer was no?
No, we're going to see. We're going to see.
Okay.
No, we left it open.
You left it open, okay.
Of course there's things which are positive. Only already all these scientists work on all this, but...
Okay.
Who wants to take this bit?
To this? Great.
Stefano.
I was thinking to try to give, say, 1% of the answer. Better data are always good, but I think that it's not a matter of needing better data. It's a matter of deciding whether better data are the most important thing that we need right now. Yep. Because better data become really crucial only if you do not have an answer. But we have an answer. So better data can certainly help us in shaping a sort of a more cutting answer, but the answer is there. So maybe together with better data, there are other things which have been mentioned only minutes ago that certainly are at least as important as better data, if not more.
Yes, thank you.
Somebody else want to react as well?
Mark Payne from the Danish Meteorological Institute. I'd actually go the next step and say that the focus on better data is actually something that can divert attention from action, that it can be used as an excuse not to actually do something. We will never have good enough data, regardless of how good our models get, regardless if ChatGPT takes over the world. We'll never have good enough data. What we need is actually the decision-making based on the data that we have. I think that's more important.
Yes, thank you.
Carlo wants to add something.
I feel I have to make the case for the data now. but I agree with what all has been said, but at the same time I feel that there are certain things where if we didn't have the data, actually we wouldn't know. I'm thinking about the ozone hole, had not been a sensor there, actually we wouldn't know. Just looking back at 2023, the massive loss of sea ice around Antarctica, well, it would have gone completely undetected had not been for the data. So I agree, it's not data per se, but I think there is data that is essential, and I don't want to go necessarily back to GCOS and the essential climate variable, but it's essential not just to close the cycle of energy of CO2 or carbon and water. It's essential for us to understand how the climate is changing, and it's essential for the political debate. So that data, I think, is important for that data to be produced operationally and made available. Some better data.
Some better data.
Okay. Interesting question. Usui, Tobias?
I was before that I was thinking about the concept of what better actually means, and because I along my years I have always had conversations with non-expert users who were always focusing on spatial resolution. Being land monitoring, it's like everyone wants to see everything, and it's very difficult to actually explain that that's not better. That's not better. So, but okay. But it's a very relevant question indeed. So my question is more on the. We talk a lot that Copernicus services should be complementary to Earth observation-based services at national level, and that is something that lies on the fundamental philosophy of Copernicus. But I would like to ask to national representatives that might be here, what else would you like? So how could we better complement you? Because I think that there's at this point, sometimes what we see are parallel evolutions, not so much a complementarity, and that's, I think that we should aim to more complementarity. But for that, we also need to understand what the needs of these national services are.
We had some presentations earlier about from the country, some selection.
Maybe I came too philosophical for this moment.
Yeah. Or maybe, Sam, you want to reflect on this? Or
I didn't. So basically, I had a good chat with Mark at DMI yesterday, and he's raising a very good point. And we were looking at the European Climate Data Explorer, and there is not necessarily a conflict, but a potential conflict in what we're providing and what the national Met services or national institutions can provide. But I think there's an ecosystem that needs to be developed to make sure that we communicate as a community what's available when and where should be going to the first point of call for data. And we have to make sure that we work together to make sure that these services are usable at the national level, and if they're not, what can we do as the next default? So I think there's a broader discussion about him being like working together. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sam, for these reflections. Tobias?
May I ask a last question? And I would be interested, how was now the experience here in Brussels? Because I liked it very much that you come to Brussels to have contact with the policy DGs, because you had contact with DG Klima, with DG Energy and something. I'm really looking a bit forward. How is it moving? We have now created on Copernicus also thematic hubs on energy and health. So a lot of things are a bit incoming, but I would like to figure out a bit from your experience, which areas, which policy areas are somehow the most advancing? Where do we maybe have soon a breakthrough that we really can say, here we have Copernicus or we have climate data that are really then widely applied? Will it be in agriculture, will it be water, will it be energy? I don't know. So I would like to feel a bit out what are the areas from your experience in these 3 days where we advance best?
Maybe I can take this question myself. So, as you may know, the GRC and together with TGDF is running the Knowledge Center on Earth Observation. And through this initiative, there are deep dives. So really going into the different policies and looking on how Earth observation capacities in its broader sense can be applied to fulfill the needs of these policies. And the hubs link to this, so that's one angle. There are also some very concrete examples on how we collaborated with policy DG. So before we started this afternoon session, we had a very good chat with colleagues from DG Energy to see how we can do this on-demand applications. We also developed applications for DG Energy and Environment in scope of the NEC directive. Because if certain thresholds are succeed because of climate-related elements, there's an exception. There's also, for the example which was given by the EIB, the European Investment Bank, about the taxonomy. And there is in the text, in the legal text, a reference that Copernicus should be used. So I think there is an assessment which illustrates how successful we are. And last week we had the same example from CAMS, where in the new NEC directive, which was voted on the last day of the European Parliament, before it got dissolved, where it was even clearly mentioned Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service. So these are all examples on how we more and more get closer to policies and start to be embedded. And this is something which we couldn't dream about, I think, even 5 years ago. So that's a big achievement. And it's a big achievement not only thanks to us, but also thanks to the policymakers and people at the Commission and at UN who really do an effort to make sure that what we are providing as a community is taken up in roadmaps, in strategies, in policies. So I think we are on a good way. I think with this, I would also like to close this panel. So I ask a round of applause to the 4 panelists. Philippe, Inge, Usue, and Tobias. Thanks a lot. And with this, I would also like to move to the final bit of our General Assembly. And I would like to ask Carlo Buontempo, our director, to come for a thank you and final conclusions.
Thank you, Stijn. Can you hear me? Yeah, good. Yeah, and thank you for chairing this last session, and thank you for being here until the very end. When this, I mean, now that this GA is getting to a close, there is a mixture of feeling really in my heart. There is certainly pride. It's been a fantastic 3 days, and it's really nice to see how the program has evolved over the last few years. There is relief. Has been very intense, and I will say something more about it. And there is also an element of saying, please, let's not mess it up now, because we are closing it. So I missed the session today, and I missed some of the discussion. But the reason why I missed the session was because we had council, ECMWF council in Brussels, and we decided bravely to have the GA alongside the council, because we were keen for our member state of ECMWF to come. And with Dalian Gelen yesterday coming and talking to us, I think that was a very important element, and it was reflected today. So at the council, many member states express full appreciation for what Copernicus is doing. And this is very different. I mean, Dick will probably remember how it was when he started. It's very different, and Daniel and Vincent Henry yesterday explained it. So that's great. The other box, I think, is that this month has been extremely intense. So my goal was to reach the beginning of July alive, and I'm still alive now, so I'm doing all right. First of all, I would like to thank all of you, and I would like to give you a round of applause. Yeah, because you have managed to stay here for the past few days. The interesting discussion about climate data, about ECVs, projection maps, NCPs, and so on. And you also managed to withstand 3-hour-long session of discussion without coffee break. So well done you. I would like to thank the panelists and the speakers. They provided new insight, new ideas, really good discussion. The example of the panel now, I think, give a good idea of what we had. And provided also a bit of fresh air in this global discussion about climate that is always so terribly negative. So having and feeling the passion and the energy, I think, was really a fresh of breath air. I would like to thank the engine that has made this General Assembly possible, and all the organizing committee, BELSPO, GOPA, and our contractors, but the technical team, the Stijn, Christina, and all the chair of the different sessions. They've done a fantastic job. And the coffee machines, who helped keeping us alive and awake during this long session. But in particular, I would like to thank Francesca Fusco. Oh, there she is, please. Because we have been doubly brave, if you allow me the term. We had the CAMS GA last week, a 10-year celebration last week, and the C3S GA this week, all at the same time of council. So at the organizational level has been very difficult, and has been even more difficult because of many changes that have taken place within the team in recent months. So really, thank you so much, Francesca, for all you've done. Now, our discussion have been scientific, quite rigorous and rich. And it's crucial to remember a bit what Mr. Dermine said at the beginning. And I think what he told about, I mean, it was very heartfelt speech, the one he gave us. And there were a couple of points that I think are important to stress. Because it's not, he was sort of highlighting the fact that we were not talking to a part of the society. And I think this is a limiting factor. So the fact that, and it came up also in this last panel, the fact that what we are saying can be felt relevant only to a part of a society or to a part of the political spectrum, I think is a weakness. It's a weakness that we should really overcome. Because because what is also clear from the discussion of Mr. Demin, from the initial panel and from this closing panel, is that now the data we are providing is very much the bedrock that inform policy, inform decision, inform the policy debate. So it's more important than ever, the work we do. But we need to ensure that this, the wealth of data, of insight and tools that Copernicus managed to put together is really seen as a resource for everyone, as a resource for society and a resource for Europe. As we heard today and yesterday, policymakers rely on our precise and up-to-date climate information to craft regulation, allocate resources, and develop strategy that can mitigate and allow us to adapt to climate change impact. So we are not just observing the climate, we are really providing the climate essential intelligence that will shape our future. It feels a bit like no pressure. So in closing, let's us commit to continue this vital work with the same dedication, drive, and curiosity. And I think it's important to highlight the curiosity because many of us came to this field and to this work because we were interested in the things we didn't understand. And maybe we are not brave enough in highlighting the things that we still don't understand, even over the last few months. And it's important to say, this is not a religion, it's science, and science is driven by curiosity. So I think it's important to highlight that. As part of the Copernicus Climate Change Service, our collective efforts are crucial. Let's stay connected, share our findings, tools, and support each other in our endeavor. So together we can navigate these changes, and these are really epochal changes, and make a meaningful impact. So thank you all very much for your hard work, safe travel, and may your data always be well formatted, GRIB or NetCDF, doesn't matter, and your weather pattern well, interesting and possibly fascinating. Thank you very much.